Welcome. This is Larry with the BulkLoads podcast. Got Christina with me today. Hi, Christina.
Hello, Larry.
We are going to take you guys on a fun podcast today. It's a little different. We haven't put out an insurance podcast in a while, so this is our first one. And I'm super excited about having Christina here with me. Christina and I have been working together now for about a year. For those of you that don't know me, I run all the sales for all of the BulkLoads companies, including Bulk TMS, Smart Freight Funding, BulkLoads, as well as Bulk Insurance Group. So we're having a lot of fun. I brought Christina on today because we're going to take you guys on kind of a journey of what it looks like from a Bulk Insurance Group perspective from one of our insurance clients. And so there's a lot that can happen from an insured perspective once the policy is bound. And I'm super excited to have Christina here because we stole Christina from another truck insurance agency. She was a little hesitant to come over at first, but now she's running everything for us on the commercial trucking insurance side. And so it's really important for you guys to get to know her. She works with all of our largest accounts. We also have a group of account managers that work under Christina, but she is our go-to for everything compliance, insurance compliance related, as well as detail oriented. So we're going to have some fun today. I always think it's funny, most times in truck insurance, it seems like you talk to the salesman, right? They're kind of the first point of contact that you speak to. But then there's a bunch of stuff that happens after the policy is actually bound and you become a client. And that's really the transition that happens into account management. So before we get into that, I just wanted to say thank you guys for listening. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't. That way you get notified every time a new podcast comes out. So yeah, let's get into it. Christina, if you would just kind of give us a high level overview of who you are, where you came from, what you're passionate about.
I got my introduction into insurance when I was in college. I started mailing out policies for a company that was based out of Conway, Arkansas. From there, I got into the details of what the forms were. They saw that I had an interest for it. I went to a couple of classes, got my associate in insurance, and I became an underwriter for them.
Oh my gosh.
So through the years, like I said, that was back in college, I have wore almost every hat there is in the insurance industry. I've not been an adjuster, but I have been on a claims coordinator for the entire state of North Dakota. I've been a producer. I've been the account manager. So I've seen it all.
How did you get connected in Conway with that insurance group?
I actually was friends with a girl that worked there. She said, hey, we could probably use somebody. I was, of all things, I was a waitress.
Sure.
Trying to put myself through college.
Yep.
And that job just fit more what I was needing at the time.
That's awesome. So are you originally from Arkansas? Where are you from?
Well, I'll say I was from Arkansas. I spent most of my teenage and young adult life in Arkansas. We'll just go with that.
Go with Arkansas?
We'll go with Arkansas.
I know you guys have moved around a little bit. Talk a little bit about kind of your background. You came over to Bulk Insurance Group and have led this division for the last, you're coming up on over a year now. Yeah. Wow, it's moved fast.
It has.
Talk about what you were doing before that and kind of your background with your husband, Adam, and how you guys moved around in the trucking industry.
So for the past 15 years, we left Arkansas and went to North Dakota for the oil boom that started there in the Bakken. I got on with an agency there in North Dakota, was a producer for them, started learning the trucking industry, started learning the insurance, that more side of the commercial side of it. We went all the way from South Texas, West Texas, back through Oklahoma, and then back up again to North Dakota. So we've spent the past 10, 15 years in the trucking industry, in the oil field. I've learned what bill of ladings were. Yeah. I've learned what the guys do, just as being a trucker.
Done a little bit of it all, it sounds like.
Yes.
Well, that's great. Well, we're happy to have you. Like I said earlier, if you deal with Bulk Insurance Group at some point, one or another, you're going to interact with Christina. So that's always the goal is we want to make sure that our insureds have an unbelievable customer experience. That's one of our, we talk a lot about, I was talking to Jared earlier about what our mission and our vision, right? We always, for all the bulk load companies, and even more so with insurance because it's so detailed. Our goal is always to make sure that we lay the expectation out for the insureds or the client and make sure that we deliver on them. And Christina really leads that for us to make sure that we're actually executing on what we say we're going to execute on. So with that being said, that's a little bit about you. We're going to kind of transition here a little bit into the day in the life of an account manager and what they do, and how it relates back to our clients. So in a normal client journey for Bulk Insurance Group, it's typically, a trucking company that comes from BulkLoads that says, hey, we need an insurance quote. And then we assign them to a producer. So a salesman reaches out to them and we start gathering documents. We review policies, and the best case scenario is we become their agent in that process, right? We hope we save them a lot of money. We obviously that's always our goal, but we always want to give them better customer service and better details regarding insurance as well. So typically in that time period, the producer gets the proposal. Maybe we got some good terms for them. The insured signs it. After that happens, there's always this transition from producer into account management. And that's something that I want to talk a little bit about today is where do we see success from the transition from the salesman? Because that salesman they're in charge of getting the deal done with the insurance market, right? Their goal is to meet a lot of clients, to solve problems for clients, to understand the client's risk and manage it. And then there's this transition. Okay, we've got it sold. And now there's all this servicing on a day-to-day perspective of these policies, right? There's endorsements.
There's all types of policy changes going on. Whether they need to add a driver, they need to take a truck off, they need to add a trailer, whatever it is. The account manager is going to handle everything that insured needs from the time that policy is bound until we go back to renewal.
Sure. Where do you see successful producers and account managers? Where's that kind of sweet spot of that transition? Because I know something that we've worked a lot with our producers is like, hey, I know you want to help this guy, but I know you really will. Like, you're not the most detail-oriented person to be trying to add a truck to a policy. That's probably not your strong suit.
Absolutely. Yeah, the producer's role is important, but when it comes down to those details, we really need that insured to go to the account manager, let them know what truck they're adding. A lot of times when the producer tries to take the information, we spend maybe 5-6 emails going back and forth and a couple of phone calls trying to gather all the information that we need to be able to make that change on their policy accurately and make sure it's accepted by the company.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's always a transition that I think all insurance companies strive to do a good job at it. I know we're really focused on trying to transition because it's hard. It can be hard for a trucker who's, I've talked to Larry the whole time up until this point. And now you're asking me to deal with somebody else that maybe I haven't created that rapport. What are some ways that account managers should be interacting with their clients, even though they're not the producer on the account? How can an account manager create rapport with their clients?
Well, I think one of our account managers, Sarah, does a really good job with that. She will reach out to them and just have a conversation with them, ask them about their day, ask them how they're doing. Is there anything else I can help you with? They really need to build that relationship with them by just giving them a call once a day, maybe pick a different client each day to give a call to. The insured needs to become comfortable with their account manager. They need to build that trust. They need to know that once they say, hey, I need this truck added, I need this driver added, that it's going to happen. And that if there's any issues, that account manager is going to come back to the insured and say, hey, we can't add this driver. He's got some issues here, which falls into another suit. We can't really tell you who to hire and who not to hire, but we can just advise you on whether they fit the policy or not.
Sure.
So if they don't fit the policy, then that's up to the insured on whether they want to go ahead and hire that or not, that driver. But just having that relationship with the insured is what the account manager needs to do, because if they've got to trust them, they've got to be able to come to them with any issues they have.
How many phone calls or emails do you get a day from our insureds asking for specific changes to policy?
Gosh, I don't know if I can put a number on that. There's quite a few.
50, 100?
From we've got 180 clients. I'd say between all of our account managers, we probably get between 50 and 100 emails a day just on changes.
Just on policy changes.
Yeah. Not necessarily, what the other questions they might have, but just on changes to their policy.
Can you give some insight to our watchers and listeners about when they send in a request to change their policy to that account manager, what happens on the backside? Because they don't know. I mean, they send us the information, and then it seems like in a few days or weeks or whenever it gets back from the insurance company, then they'll just get either a debit or a credit on their policy when they're removing or adding equipment. Can you walk us through that process?
So that also varies between whether or not we have a direct market or if it's an agency market,
Sure.
if we're using a broker. So once that insured makes that phone call or email to us, we take that information, we make sure we have it all. We send it off to the company, whether that's the direct market or agent, the broker. Where we're sending that off to them, they may come back with questions on, how many, say we forgot to add something, they may come back with questions on, how many years experience that driver have. So then we've got to go back and forth. So there may be a day or two there before they actually can process it on their end. The broker then sends it off to the company. The company can take up to 3 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks before they get that endorsement, that process changed and back to us.
Sure. So that can be a long process.
So that can be a long
especially when you're
process.
expecting a credit, right? You
Absolutely.
remove some trucks, or you decrease some coverage somewhere and you're expecting to get some money back. But it may take 3 weeks for the insurance company to actually issue
Correct.
the endorsement onto the policy. And we see that a lot. And something that we're always trying to mitigate, obviously, with our insureds is, hey, being upfront with, this isn't an overnight process. There's certain processes that insurance companies have to take in order for the policy to be endorsed. And it can be a really uncomfortable conversation. And I think that's, that's another point is we want to be really upfront with our insureds about how long it could possibly take, because I think and this is something that we always say too, insurance companies are really good at taking your money, but they're really bad at giving it back.
And it goes the same way, whether it's a return premium or an additional premium, it's still going to take that same amount of time.
Yep.
We've started implementing something new with being able to, if the policy is financed, we're going to start sending that money straight back to the finance company, whereas it was taking longer, 60 to 90 days
Sure.
before we could get that money back to the finance company because they were sending it directly to us.
Right.
So now we're going to be sending it straight to the finance company. So hopefully that'll shorten that time that return premium gets back to the insured and they get to see a difference in their monthly payments.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to having the trust and the relationship as well as, obviously we want them to get their money back as soon as possible, but there's certain steps that have to go and take place before we can just issue a check. So, you mentioned that you had a background in claims. Let's talk about claims for a second.
Okay.
Claims are never fun.
Nobody likes claims. I don't like to get the call that, hey, my insurance had a claim, but they happen.
How do you handle it when you do get that call? And could you give them some advice on, hey, you've just had a claim or your driver's had a claim. Here's the necessary steps to take.
So when an insured calls me and says they've got a claim, they've had something happen, first thing I always ask them is, everybody okay? Was there anybody injured? We go from there. They need to document everything. They've pictures, police report. They need to have all that information, who was driving, what truck it was, what trailer they were pulling. They need to have as much information as they can before they call us, because we have to if we make the claim ourselves, we're going to submit it to the carrier. Now, a lot of carriers like for the insured to call them directly. And the reason being is that cuts out the middleman.
Sure.
That takes less time then for them, because they've already got the information they need there. If they have any additional questions, they can go ahead and ask the insured right then. They're not waiting for a week or so to call back.
Yeah.
So that cuts out that part. In what the insured needs to do at that point is, like I said, make sure that first of all, they have to make sure that there's not going to be any more loss happen. So if they've got cargo, they need to get that secured. Whatever the truck is, if it's at the yard, tow yard, they need to make sure that it's secured. Then I like to tell them that the adjuster is going to be assigned to their claim. That adjuster may have an out-of-area number.
Sure.
Answer all calls in the next 48 hours. If they don't get that call in the next 48 hours, call me back. There's an issue. We need that adjuster to be calling them within 48 hours.
Sure.
The biggest hang up I think they have is they may let a claim go too long before they say something to us. If an adjuster's not communicating with you on a daily or a weekly basis, let us know.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they don't understand that we don't get notification of things.
Right.
It comes from the company and it goes straight to the insured. They keep us out of a lot of that.
Yeah.
So for us to get involved, we have to find out who the adjuster is, go back to them and say, hey, I need you to start contacting me and let me know what's going on with this claim.
Yep. No, that's really good. So in that claims process, typically you got a driver that will call in and he'll say, hey, I've just been in an accident. What steps from the accident do you typically tell him to take? Do you tell him to, okay, obviously you said, make sure everyone's okay. If everyone's okay, hey, you need to call the owner of the company. They need to report the claim.
Exactly. The driver needs to call. He should have contact information before he ever goes out on the road, who he needs to call if there's an incident. In the trucking experience that I've had in the past, we always provided a camera in the glove box of that truck.
Oh,
so
sure.
now we've got cell phones. I'll tell my age a little bit here. We always provided a camera in there along with a checklist. There to gather the other person's information, any witnesses
Yep.
there, take pictures, gather as much documentation. If there was a police or a fire department called, let us know who that was. You should be able to talk to the officer, get in a report number, give that information back to your company
Sure.
so that they can get it reported.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that's one area where it's the claim is never, it's going to happen. We're in trucking, and it's a misconception to think that claims aren't going to happen in trucking. Claims happen. We got drivers that are on the road every day, trucks that are on the road every day. So claims will happen, but the preparation is key in the claim, right? If you can train your drivers ahead of time, here's the steps you take when this does happen. And it helps us as the agency to be able to communicate effectively to the insurance market if we are the ones reporting the claim. It also helps us to create some sort of dialogue via email so we can start tracking the conversations going back and forth. So if we do need to push a claims adjuster, like, hey, we've reached out 4 or 5 times and it's been 3 days and no one's heard anything. Here's all the documentation, all the email correspondence that we've had with the insured and with you, and still no one's reaching out. So that gives us some leverage when we go back to the insurance company and like, hey, you guys need to fix this claim. It needs to get moving. I guess in my experience, I've dealt with a lot of claims where I always feel like the claims adjuster is just moving too slow. Right or wrong, I'm probably always going to feel that way. It's maybe not always the case. And there's been some really good cases where it's moved along really well, but claims are a great time for an agency to advocate for their client.
Absolutely.
And that's where I appreciate what you've done with our claims department and our claims handling is making sure that we don't have the control to issue a check, but we do have the control to follow up on our insured's behalf and be their advocate, so that the claim does get resolved as quickly as possible.
Yes, absolutely.
How would you say, trucking has changed so much? Even in I've been in trucking for 9 years now. It's changed a lot since I've been in trucking. Talk a little bit about how the trucking insurance landscape has changed over the last, I don't know, however long you've been doing it.
Oh gosh. Let's just say a decade. Let's go back a decade.
Okay, decade. Let's do that.
We've got more markets now than we did 10 years ago.
Yep.
We've got more specialty programs than we did. We've got better places for them to insure them at. So we have that. Technology has also helped us a lot.
Yeah.
We have telematics now, which we didn't have a lot back 10, 15 years ago. And with that telematics, we've got the ELDs and the truckers.
Yep.
So they can use that and they can actually do a mileage reporting, and it's more accurate. I know we have one program that is done nothing but based on the mileage they actually run.
Right. Yeah, I love that.
And we didn't have that 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And there was no way to calculate, how many miles the trucker actually drove.
Right.
And be accurate with it. So the telematics has helped a lot. And there's other programs that will give them a discount just for having that ELD and allowing them to see their data.
Yeah.
It doesn't harm the trucker and it doesn't go against them in a negative way. It just allows them to have a discount because they get more knowledge on what the trucking industry is doing.
So insurance companies always say, oh, it doesn't hurt them. Do you honestly believe that they don't use that ELD data against the trucker, even at renewal?
They wouldn't use it any more than they would their IFTAs.
Yeah.
So they're going to see on the IFTAs, you see where they go, their mileage they actually go. They're not going to use it any more different than that.
Yeah. I think that's we hear that all the time, right? Is like, hey, if I give my ELD data, what are the chances that they use it against me? And I don't know. I don't know the answer because I think that what we hear from the insurance markets is, of course not. We will never use that against you. Your rates don't go up midterm. Where I'm actually curious, and I don't know the answer, is if they have really bad driver history in their ELDs and their telematics and they're really hard braking and they got all that data. I don't know if there's any legal clause, and maybe you do, but at renewal, when that comes out, can they use that information against the insured at renewal time to give them a higher rate? I don't know.
Not for hard braking. I mean, for speeding, I mean, they're not going to do it unless there's a ticket that's associated with it. They understand that there's errors that can happen in that. They're looking more like what the mileage is, where they're going, how far are they traveling, things like that is what they're using that ELD for.
Yeah. Yeah, 10 years ago, I can't imagine that any of that data was readily available, but we do see big discounts, and that's the interesting, and that's where I think the whole conversation gets interesting is like, so if I have really good drivers and I have really good history, like, well, do I save a lot of money on insurance? And I think the answer is the markets that are doing it today, there is significant savings for the right risk. Now it's got to be a person that's okay with telematics and utilizing it. But for the right risk, we're actually seeing a lot of people switch to it and save a considerable amount of money. Absolutely. What else has changed?
Let's see, we've got more markets. We've got the telematics.
What about the cab report? I mean, how often are you looking at those, or how often are you hearing underwriters on renewals that you're working on talk about the cab report?
They're always looking at the cab report. They're looking at the cab report for any changes, any negative changes, any maybe changes that are going the other way too. So if they've had a bad cab report in the past and they've been shown improvement, then there's more opportunities. There's more markets we can market them out to at renewal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. It's ever evolving, it seems like. And it's changing at such a rapid pace, and the technology is changing so fast where it seems like there's always going to be, when we look 10 years back, there's always going to be a considerable amount of new data that has arrived that underwriters use. And over the last 10 years, it really seems like they've honed in on that cab report and the accuracy of it. And they're actually using that in a lot of ways more than they're using losses to determine premium at renewals. And that's always interesting to me because, our job is to communicate the best possible version to the marketplace of the risk. And we'll see people with really bad cab reports get really good pricing sometimes. And we'll see the opposite, which is really good cab reports getting like average pricing. And that always is frustrating from the agency side because, our goal is to always get everybody a really good renewal. And underwriters will kind of nitpick, do I want to look at the loss ratio over the last 5 years, or do I look at the cab report? And our goal is to always communicate the best to the marketplace. And that's what we do a really good job at. And I'd say you do a really good job of that as well. So with that being said, what do you foresee the industry changing from a trucking side? I mean, you've seen a lot of changes. Do you see any big changes with either the markets that we use, or the just renewal pricing? I know we've seen rates go up the last couple of years. Is that consistent with what you're seeing?
I know the rates have steadily increased over the past 10 years. I think I read a report recently that it's almost doubled what they were 10 years ago. The per mileage that the average trucker is paying for insurance is doubled what it was 10 years ago. So it is steadily climbing. I don't know if there's much that we can do about it because, everything's going up in price. The trucks themselves are costing more. I know there's a driver shortage now. So the drivers companies are having to go find drivers that may not have the experience. So that increases their cab report too.
Sure. Yeah. Maybe inexperienced drivers causing the rates to go up as well. And that's another argument that I feel like we're in constant arguing with underwriters is just because this guy's got 20 years experience doesn't mean that he's a better driver than somebody with 2. Now, they're going to tell us, right? Like, well, history doesn't say that. But we hear it a lot from clients is, hey, actually, this guy's only got a year experience, but he's one of my best drivers. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And it's always hard to display it back to the clients that, hey, he may be your best driver, but historically people in this age range don't perform well and they cause losses. And that's why this insurance company is either excluding him from the policy altogether or charging a premium in order to keep him on there.
Yeah. Underwriters don't typically like a driver that's had less than 2 years experience. And going, when we write a policy, that's included. Most policies that to add a driver, they have to have at least 2 years experience.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, maybe their best driver, like you said, but the underwriters just aren't going to go for it. They're going to charge a premium increase probably for that driver.
Yep. No, we see it all the time. Well, this has been super fun. I'm not going to drag it out. I think that we accomplished what we want to do, which was to get you in touch with our clients. We want everybody that's watching to feel comfortable to reach out to Christina. Christina is my right hand. And so anything that I don't do or can't handle or Jared doesn't handle, I feel like we push it to you. And we just want to say, first of all, thank you for coming to Bulk Insurance Group. It's been a wild ride, and it feels like we're still at the beginning. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. Last question. What made you come to Bulk Insurance Group? Because you were at another agency, a large agency, does a lot of trucks. I mean, what sold you on what we have that maybe other agencies don't?
I looked at the business model. I looked at BulkLoads, what you were doing. I got to see Jared's vision.
Yeah.
And the reality that he was really just wanting to help the truckers, the grain market.
Yep.
It wasn't just for profit.
Yeah.
He really had a heart in it. And the deciding factor probably was the Christian based.
Yeah.
I've never worked for a company that when we went to dinner that somebody prayed.
Yeah.
That was the deciding factor, I think, for me, was this really felt like home.
Yeah. Well, there you go, folks. You have it right there. I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, I'm not much different than you. I think that the mission and the vision here is purposeful. Our goal is to always provide more access to services that truckers use, and then to create the best client experience possible through those services. So with all the companies, that's always the goal and the mission. I think Jared's done a really good job at portraying that, and Matt and Rachel as well. So our family of companies, we're having a really fun time, right? I mean, every business unit is growing. We're hiring the best talent available. And we're also always looking for better ideas to continue to serve our truckers. And so that's super fun. With that being said, guys, thank you for watching. This has been a really fun podcast. You can always reach out to me at larry@bulkinsurancegroup.com. Feel free to reach out to Christina at bulkinsurancegroup.com. She is a wealth of knowledge, and she is handling all of our commercial lines. So if you are one of our insureds, first of all, thank you. Second of all, you've probably already interacted with Christina. If you've got a policy question or a general question about insurance, please feel free to reach out to her. And yeah, thank you for tuning in.